Get ready to break molds and blaze trails. Welcome to the Chelsea Home Podcast, your shortcuts to wellness, business, and growth with a twist. Let's flip the script and unlock your full potential together. Odds are you have been successful in one area of your life or a few areas of your life, but you're struggling in this other area and you're like, I did that. Why can't I do this? Right? But here's something that we're going to talk about today. It's translating that success and that thinking behind the success of another area into this current area that you're struggling with, right? It's so common to see people totally kill it in their job or business or whatever, but then their relationships or their health suffers. And, you see people who can totally go out there and do like all the super hard physical things, but then translating that into the confidence of how they show up in their business or in their own personal life and their fitness, like it's night and day. And there's no, you can't even tell that it's the same person, right? And so why is this happening? Well, we're going to talk about this. We're going to dive into this. I want to give you an overview of how your brain works for the weirdos like me who want to know what's actually going on inside your skull. And then we're also going to talk about how you can successfully translate the thinking and the success behind other areas into the areas you're struggling with. So let's start with what's going on in your brain. So our brains are neuroplastic first and foremost, which means that they're not static, they're not fixed. They're constantly wiring, rewiring, making certain neural connections stronger, getting rid of other ones that are not used, right? This is why you can get in the car and you can drive somewhere you've driven a million times and get there and not remember anything about that because your subconscious was at work, right? You have these strong neural connections that can do it for you. Basically run the show. It's these deeply rooted, strong neural connections, these patterns that have been consistently repeated over and over and over, so that can move into your subconscious, right? So if you've ever tried to do something new, like brush your teeth with your left hand if you're right-handed, it can really challenge your thinking because you have to take something that was a subconscious thought pattern and you're moving it into the conscious, right? And so it can feel so awkward and such a challenge. But if you keep brushing your teeth with your left hand for a year, it's going to move back into your subconscious because now you don't have to think about it anymore. It's not conscious anymore. Our brains use the power of the subconscious because otherwise we would go insane, right? Like if our brain was constantly thinking actively about all of the things going on around us, like us, how the seat feels that we're sitting on, how all the different sounds that we're hearing at all times. Like right now I'm sitting outside and if I think about it, I can hear the bugs and I can hear the birds. But when I'm not thinking about it, like my brain is filtering all that out so that I don't lose my mind, right? And so that's what our subconscious does is it filters out the things that we don't need to actively think about anymore because they have become such a deeply entrenched, rooted pattern for us, okay? And so when it comes to changing any kind of pattern, any kind of neural connection, we actually have to take that subconscious thought and we have to move it into the conscious, okay? And so that's where creating awareness around these limiting and I guess undesirable patterns is really, really important. Okay, so now like that's all that's going on in our brain, right? The good news is we can rewire it. Our brains are constantly rewiring. It's what we choose to focus on and bring to the conscious so that we can move that back into our subconscious. And that's what we want, right? We want things to become natural for us. But anytime we're trying to create new results, it's always going to feel very unnatural in the beginning. And that's why practice, practice, practice is what I always say. Like when you are practicing a new mindset, a new thought pattern, it takes practice and consistency and discipline and diligence. It's not perfect, but the longer you do it, the easier it does get. Okay, so when it comes to translating to success, first, I just want to share my story with you of running a marathon because anyone who's run a marathon, we want to talk about this crap all day long because it was really hard. And it wasn't just the race itself that was hard. It was, first of all, signing up for it. I still remember sitting there signing up for this race. And like, it was a mixture of excitement and terror because 26.2 miles, I think at the time, the furthest I had ever ran was 13. Um, and that was, you know, 2 kids and however many years earlier, like 6 years, 5 years, 4 years, something like that. Anyway, and so like all the thoughts were running through my head, like, can I actually do this? Like, what if I sign up and then I don't actually do it? Because you can't just sign up for a marathon unless you're my husband and then go run it like a week later. Like, that's not smart for most people. Okay. And I was most people in the situation. Like, you need to know that I was asked to be on the soccer team in high school because I went to a very small Christian school and the girls' soccer team just needed players. Like, they needed bodies on the field, and I happened to be a body. And so they were like, please come join us for soccer. And I was like, I don't run. I'm not a runner. Okay. Like, I hated running. Like, I would only run unless someone was chasing me. Like, no, thank you. That's what I had horses for. I rode horses. They ran. I sat. And that was a struggle in and of itself of like being someone who did not run, did not enjoy it, um, learning how to do that, like having to run in order to be successful in any capacity. And I wouldn't say that I was successful. I successfully showed up. I successfully, went to the practices, half the time stepped on the ball and fell on my butt because foot coordination, not so great for me. Yeah. I will say though, because it's isolated, because it's not hands and feet at the same time, it is much easier. Like, that's why I liked volleyball, because it's not really feet and hands at the same time. It's more like like you got to move around, but it's not. Yeah. Okay. So it doesn't matter. So signing up for this marathon, like, it was this mixture of terror and excitement. And as soon as I hit like pay, like, I actually paid to do this, right? Like, that's the craziest thing about running races is we actually pay to be in pain. We pay with our money, and then we also pay with our time because we're training. We pay with our body because we are physically in pain through the process. It's a crazy thing. But I will say, anytime I have done something physically that challenged me, it has helped me to grow in all other areas of my life. And so running this marathon was amazing for me because I had to show up way before the race, like multiple times a week, running, right? Doing my training. And honestly, I did a much scaled back training because my goal for that race was not to beat a certain time. It was to finish and to finish well. Again, not in a time, but like in a mindset capacity, right? Like, my goal was to finish, to do the dang thing, but I did not care about how long it took me. I didn't care about how fast I was or how slow I was, none of that, right? And so, I had to show up, every week. I did a long run. So every Sunday, there I was, like, out running, and we have church on Sunday. So a lot of times this would be either super early mornings on Sundays, or this would be super, like, late at night on Sundays sometimes, or right after church, middle of the day. And honestly, there was one time where we went out to Mexican after church, and I think I had a margarita and I had like all the chips and queso, because who has restraint at a Mexican restaurant? I'm sorry. Like, that's not why you go. So like, I had all that and I was like, oh my gosh, like, I have to run today and this is gonna suck. Like, this is gonna be the worst run ever. Thankfully my body was like, thank you for those carbs. And it was an amazing run, actually. So maybe that's the key to running well is, margaritas and chips and queso. I don't know. I mean, I haven't really gone back to test that again in that capacity. But I had my best run at the time. I think that day I ran like 15 miles, which was the longest I had ran at that point in my training plan. So anyway, But like, okay, so get to actual race day. Like I was scared, but also I was like, I trained for this. Like I have done this. Like I haven't done the full thing. I mean, I did not get the mileage in that I should have. Looking back for that training, like I should have at least ran very, very close to 26 miles, and I hadn't done that. And so I knew that that was going to be a challenge. The cool thing is because Zach ran with me, we both tanked at different points and we were able to encourage each other. And that was just a testament to the power of the people you surround yourself with. Like, did they believe you can do it or not? Like, can they carry your belief when you're exhausted and when you just can't see it? Like, so important, right? Okay. So I remember that moment of crossing the finish line too. Like the overwhelming emotion of, oh my gosh, we did it. We finished before the cutoff time, like just barely, but we did it. And we kept pushing when my right calf felt like there was a softball in there. And I was kind of dragging my leg at one point, like, you will not quit. And the van that's picking up stragglers, who aren't going to make the cutoff is right behind me. And I'm like, you go away. Like, I will not quit at this point. I have already come too far. I think that was at like mile 21 or 22. And I was like, no, we are so close. Like, we are going to do this. You know what I mean? And temptation was there. That's for sure. I was like, this one lady I'm running next to, she's like talking to her husband who's like getting a Diet Coke and cheeseburgers and fries or something at the finish line. And then she like gets off the phone and she's like, yeah, she's like, I might just be done now. And then like she like gets in the van and I was like, what? Like why? Like we've already like half died. Like, come on. I don't know. It was just mind blowing to me. I was like, I did not come this far to quit. Like, I will do this. And so when I crossed that finish line, knowing that I did it and I didn't die, and it's always amazing to me when I run races that, like, at the end, no matter how tired you are, there is always more in the tank because every single time for that last little stretch when I can see the finish line, I sprint. And it's not pretty, but I can do it. And it just always goes to show me that the mind is what needs to be convinced. The body's got it in there. It's the mind that needs to be convinced. And so, like, I can totally, in this moment, I can feel what I felt when I crossed that finish line. And so when I talk about look at successes you've already had in your life, if you're a mom, this is an easy one. You've literally birthed babies. Okay. And then if you also breastfed them too, you literally nourish them from your own body. Like, guys, if that's not success and overcoming challenge, I don't know what is. And like, what was your mind going into that? Like, what was your mind going into childbirth? Like, I remember having my first baby and I had no idea what I was doing. And I took the classes and the classes weren't helpful because no one tells you that having a baby is like taking a giant poop. Like, come on. And that you can trust your body. And honestly, having a baby is about your mind. It's about managing your pain because you're choosing to relax instead of fighting against it. You're choosing to let your body do its thing and leaning into it instead of trying to get away from it, right? I've had my babies without pain meds. I did have a pain med drip with my Ruthie. And so that took the edge off until it was time to push. And then I was able to, feel everything through that process, which is a good thing because, being able to feel your body and what it's doing, like, wow. And then for Bo, I had laughing gas, which was a whole experience in and of itself. Never had that before. Um, and the tank ran out right when I was getting ready to push. So honestly, at the time when that alarm was blaring off because the tank ran out, like that was frustrating. I'm like, can somebody please shut that off because that's horrible. Like you guys trying to kill me or what? But it was a blessing in disguise because I was able to be fully conscious as, is what I wanted and be able to move through that process. And again, feel my body and move with it instead of fight against it. And so again, if you've had a baby, if you have nursed your babies in any capacity, like you have done hard things. So what was your mindset going through it? And mine was always, I can do this, because at the end, I know that I get a baby out of this. Like, I'm bringing this child into the world, right? And so doing those hard things and those things that I told myself going into it. And then, so that's like the first part of it is, what was your thinking going into that hard thing that you had success in, right? Like, what were you telling yourself, like, through that whole process of, like, I can do this, like, I can trust my body through this. I've put in the work, I've done the training, whatever it was, like, what is it that you were thinking through, like, the beginning of that process, throughout that process, and then during, right before you had some success there? Don't mind, there's some feral children out in our neighborhood screaming right now, but, um, and then the second piece of that is, remember that moment of, you know, crossing the finish line. So if you're having babies, that's birthing the baby and babies in your arms, right? If you're running a race, it's crossing that finish line. If it was going through an extremely difficult, life-shattering moment, and, finding that peace and joy through that process, and having that moment where you just have that moment of, like, I feel healed, again. Something like that, like, going through those hard things. What did that feel like when you had that moment of, like, wow, I did it, like, not just, like, thinking of how you felt, but, like, really embody, like, what did that feel like in your body? Okay, so those are the two pieces you need when it comes to translating your successful mindset into other areas that you're currently struggling in. So I see this a lot in business. Women will kill it in one area, and it can be multiple areas. Like, they can kill it in their fitness and their health, and they can kill it as a mom, and all these other capacities, and as a wife. But then translating that confidence into their business is a challenge. And, like, I get this, because there's something with having babies in those early years, early to middle years, where, I mean, you essentially lose sight of yourself because, well, you've never done it before, right? And the world tells you that your children are supposed to be the center of your world, and that's not true. So if you're believing that, you can stop believing that lie. Do you have a very important role in your children's life? Absolutely. Are they your responsibility? Absolutely. But the way that they turn out is actually not your responsibility, because you can't make anyone do anything. You can only lay the groundwork for them and love them and nurture them and point them in the direction they should go and model it yourself, but you can't force them. And so you can take that weight off your shoulders, because the way your children turns out, if you are being responsible to God and doing everything you can and loving them and trying, working to grow yourself as a parent.
Oh my gosh, I am so glad you're here. I'm so glad you're listening to this podcast. As you know, I believe that if you're not growing, you're dying. So you are in the right place to continue developing your growth mindset. If you have a business and you're an entrepreneur in any capacity, but especially in the social selling world, online and social media, but you're feeling stuck. You've created some level of success, but you can't seem to get past it. You're frustrated. You're feeling burnt out. You're starting to question yourself. You don't feel like you're fully stepping into who you are and how you want to build your business, then go check out my signature course, the Speed and Stability Playbook, and you're going to get timeless principles that are going to be funneled through your strengths so that you can show up and build your business exactly like you want and not how someone is telling you to, so that you can work on the mindset of becoming the person that already has the things that you're looking to create, and being able to do that and generate that through any strategy that aligns with you. Go check that out now in the show notes. Now let's get back to the episode.
Like, that's your only responsibility. Like, you're not responsible for their success either. And success is such a vague term that anyone can define differently. The world tells us that successful kids is, what we're after. And again, it's not true. Actually, what we should be chasing after is, children who love the Lord, because we've modeled it for them and we've nurtured them through that, with the understanding that we will launch them into this world like arrows into the world. And then what, right? And so translating, let's say you ran a marathon and you were amazingly successful at that, or you tried a new skill. And over time, you went from beginner who had no idea what they were doing to mastering that and now teaching other people. Okay, how are we going to translate that in? So first, we're going to explore what we were thinking in those other areas, right? And then we're going to take some moments to really embody that feeling. And then we're going to create a new story about this area that we're struggling with. So say it's our business that we're just really struggling to show up, or we're discrediting any of the work that we are doing. I see this a lot too. I was just doing a coaching call, and one of our clients was, everything she said, she just discredited herself, like minimized how awesome that was, and like took any amount of celebration away. And, there were a couple reasons for that. I mean, the first was that we tend to set the bar low for ourselves. So like if we don't expect too much of ourselves, like then it's okay if we don't achieve something, right? Like it's like, oh well, it's okay, like it's no big deal, like if I don't hit it, like not it's okay, right? And so we take the pressure off of ourselves in the sense of we don't hold ourselves accountable to that next level of growth that's needed for us to do that, and we play small, and that doesn't serve anyone. And so how would we apply this in business? We would look, first of all, stop discrediting ourselves and actually celebrate any win, no matter how small. And secondly, we would look at the areas that we were successful in, and we would see ourselves as other people see us. And this is where the power of and value of coaches come in, because coaches are going to hold that belief for you when you can't see it or hold it yet for yourself. And so we're going to essentially take the lens off of how other people are seeing us, and we're going to put them on ourselves and see ourselves through that lens in this area we're struggling in. Why? So what was our thinking behind it? What was that embodied feeling we felt when we were successful? And what could that look like in this area of my life? What would I need to think about myself and about what I'm doing in order for me to have this same kind of success in this area I'm struggling in, right? Like, what would that level of confidence look like? How would that person show up? Why would that person show up, right? Like, going to that deeper why of like, okay, so you say it's about other people, right? Okay, well, why is that important to you? Okay, so helping, great. Okay, but what does that mean? Like, if that happens, what does that mean for you? And why is that such a big deal for you? And really digging in and getting to that deeper why of why you're showing up. Because it's easy when it's our kids, right? Like when we're birthing babies, it's easy for us to be like, of course I'll do this, or of course I'll do that because I love this child, right? Like, I mean, look at pregnancy and how, there are things we shouldn't do because it's not wise. Now, I will tell you, as someone who doesn't like following rules when they don't make sense, this was one I had a little bit more leeway with. But when I was a gestational carrier, I followed the rules to a T because it wasn't my baby, which is funny. But just in the sense of like, sorry kids, like this is how your mom rolls, like this is how we're gonna roll. But when it was someone else's child, I was like, okay, like we're gonna play by the rules, we're gonna follow the book. But in both of those, it was easy for me to be like, of course I will, practice discipline in these areas. Of course, I will prioritize my nutrition and sleep. And, of course, I will go into this labor and delivery with a positive mindset because I know the outcome, right? Like, I may not know all the details, but I'm still going to go through this process. And so we need to be able to translate that into this area we're struggling with. Business is an easy one to talk about because that's usually the one that doesn't translate the easiest, right? And so, what is it in our business we need to, of course, I would, you know, have these events. Of course, I would follow up with people. Of course, I would take care of my members and have this call with them to explain all of their benefits so that they understand. Of course, I am going to get out there and make new connections because, right? So we need to have this level of course, and that's where the translation comes in. It's that deeper reason of why we're going to show up as our confident self and get out there and do things that make us uncomfortable because, of course, fill in the blank, right? For me in business, I built my network marketing business through social media because that worked for me. And so, and my, of course, was, of course, I am going to talk to these women and ask them questions and, put myself in their company because I don't want them to have to feel as horrible and as exhausted as I did and have their doctors laugh at them and tell them to take more naps. Of course, I am going to show up and do events where they can learn so that they can be their own best advocate. Of course, I'm going to follow up because I know that they're busy moms and this is not their top priority that they're thinking of. But of course, it is mine, and I'm going to be the one who does these things because, of course, more moms feeling better is always a good thing. More moms feeling better show up as better wives, show up as women with bigger capacities to be able to make an impact in this world. More moms who are feeling better and now helping other people are going to also be creating income and be able to play bigger in so many other ways, right? So you've got to reach down and find that, of course, in this area you're struggling in. And it helps to look at your own case studies of areas you were successful in, of situations you were successful in, and challenges you overcame. What were you thinking through that? What was your mindset? What did it feel like when you succeeded? And then we're going to turn around and we're going to apply what we learned from that personal case study, and we're going to apply it to this area we're struggling in. And when we need to, and we usually do, we're going to work with a coach, whether in a group setting or one-on-one. Side note, Collab Coaching 3.0 will be opening again in September for our third round. So if that's something you're interested in, then reach out to me on Instagram, Chelsea_Noel. Get coaching where someone can hold and carry your belief for you and help you to facilitate you seeing it and believing it for yourself so that you can take unhindered action. The strategy doesn't matter. It's the belief behind it that does. As soon as you've got that belief, you can implement any strategy and be successful because you have your, of course, I'm going to do this, right? So I hope you found this encouraging today. And I just know, if you're someone, and I don't think you'd be listening to this if this is you, but if you are someone and you've struggled with oh, I haven't done anything, I haven't overcome anything. Okay. Go to someone you love and trust and ask them, tell me about a time that you saw me walk through a challenge or do something hard and succeed. Tell me what that looked like. Okay. Yeah, there are things. There is nobody in this life that hasn't overcome something and succeeded in some area in some way, shape, or form. Doesn't matter how small or how big. What matters is your mindset through that process and how it felt to create that success. And then you're going to translate the heck out of that. Okay. So, one thing I challenged a client to was, she was talking about her son and pouring into him and just that belief she has in him of you can do this. and just like all these things she was saying to him. And I was like, hey, okay, I want you to pause. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to go to your bathroom mirror with your phone, hit the record button, and I want you to say to yourself in the mirror exactly what you said to him, but to say it for yourself. Record it. You don't have to share it with anyone, but you're going to watch it and you're going to rewatch it. And it's like that moment, that scene in Cool Runnings. I forgot their names now, but Junior and Yolu, I don't know what his name is, but the scarier looking guy, right? He is like, Junior, you know what I see? And Junior's like, no, what do you see? And he's like, I see a badass mother who don't take no crap from nobody. And he's like, you see that? And he's like, yeah, I do. But it's not about what I see. It's about what you see. And then he practices having him repeat after him. And by the time they get to the end of that, he like runs away. He's like, yeah. Right? Like, that's what a coach does. And that's why I love coaching. But that's exactly what you need to do for yourself, because it's easy to pour belief into other people, but doing it for yourself can feel so awkward. But I want to challenge you too, that you playing small is actually extremely selfish, because you're letting your fear of failure or how people are going to see you or what they're going to think about you, you're letting those things put a lid on your ability to now help other people. If you have been helped in some area, you have overcome, you have a duty to now go and help other people do the same thing, because I guarantee that whatever prompted you was a pain point and you overcame something, you found a solution. You have got to go share that with people. Like, that is your duty. And to do otherwise is selfish. To play small is selfish. To minimize your voice is selfish. Okay, I know that may seem hard because you're like, well, I'm just being humble, right? No, that is not what humility is. That is a false sense of humility, okay? That is not what God is asking of us, right? Now, are we going to go out and be like, I'm the best? Like, whose glory is it for, right? Like, who's being glorified through this? God is being glorified through our successes, because first of all, he made our brains, right? He made them the way that they are, the fact that they can be rewired. There is a reason why God's word has so many passages about taking your thoughts captive to Christ, right? It's our duty. Like, we can't just sit in our small little homes and be like, oh, poor me. Like, I can't help anybody. Yes, you can. Stop that small thinking. Go to the mirror right now. Turn off this podcast. Just turn it off. Go to the mirror right now and record yourself pouring belief into yourself, and keep saying it over and over and over, and remind yourself of those challenges you've overcome. Remind yourself of how it felt to cross that finish line. Remind yourself of that, and then translate that into this area you're struggling in, and watch everything change, because your belief is in the driver's seat. And if your belief is not there, nobody's driving the car, and it's no wonder you're not going anywhere and you're continuing to sit in the passenger seat wanting the car to go somewhere, but there's no driver. Okay? Like, that's dumb. Sorry, it is, right? And I've done this too. So I'm preaching to myself in these things. But like, there is this moment right now. You need to go and pour into yourself like you would pour into somebody that you know is greatness. They have greatness inside, and it is untapped, and it needs to be unleashed. And you see it. You need to see it for yourself. And if you really can't see it right now, you need to work with a coach. You need to come do collab coaching 3.0 with us, or one-on-one coaching with me. And we will hold this belief until you can see it in yourself. And my, oh my, I am here for that moment when you see it too. And you have that belief in the driver's seat, and that pedal goes to the metal, and you're like, zoom, away we go, and start creating that exponential growth. And that confidence is soaring as it was supposed to, right? Oh man, that moment is so special. That moment is what makes me jump out of bed every day to do coaching, because that moment is priceless and powerful. You cannot stop somebody who has belief like that. You can have that kind of belief for yourself. Take care, my friend.
Thanks for joining the Chelsea Home podcast journey. If you've enjoyed challenging the norm and embracing growth with a twist, share the love. Don't forget to subscribe. Until next time, keep defying expectations and keep leaning into who God made you to be.